Okay, so remember Moody was saying that here. Imagining things, am I? Growled Moody. Seeing things, eh? It was a skilled witch or wizard who put that boy's name in the goblet.
What did it describe?
Like very talented, like he knows what he's doing. A good wizard or witch. Ah, what evidence is there of that? Said Madame Maxime, throwing up her huge hands. Because they hoodwinked a very powerful magical object. Right? The goblet of fire is very powerful, said Moody. It would have needed an exceptionally strong confundus charm to bamboozle that goblet into forgetting that only 3 schools compete in the tournament. I'm guessing they submitted Potter's name under a 4th school to make sure he was the only one in his category. You seem to have given this a very great deal of thought, Moody, said Karkaroff coldly. And a very ingenious theory it is, though, of course. I heard you recently got it into your head that one of your birthday presents contained a cunningly disguised, very well hidden, like in a very good costume, basilisk egg, and you smashed it into pieces before realizing it was a carriage clock. So you'll understand if we don't take you entirely serious. Yeah, he's telling him, like, you're just paranoid. You think everything is like... There are those who will turn innocent occasions to their advantage, Moody retorted in a menacing voice. It is my job to think the way dark wizards do, Karkaroff, as you ought to remember. Alastor, said Dumbledore warningly. Harry wondered for a moment whom he was speaking to, but then he realized Mad Eye could hardly be Moody's real first name. Moody fell silent, though still surveying Karkaroff with satisfaction. Karkaroff's face was burning. It was all red. How this situation arose we do not know, said Dumbledore, speaking to everyone gathered in the room. It seems to me, however, that we have no choice but to accept it. Both Cedric and Harry have been chosen to compete in the tournament. This, therefore, they will do. Ah, but Dumbledore, my dear Madame Maxime, if you have an alternative, I would be delighted to hear it. Dumbledore waited, but Madame Maxime did not speak. She merely glared. She wasn't the only one either. Snape looked furious. Karkaroff, livid. It's also very angry. Bagman.
What did Professor Dumbledore tell her?
That he's also going to join. Harry will also have to join.
Yeah, and then what did she want to tell him?
She said it's not fair. Why does Hogwarts get 2 competitors? Dumbledore waited, but Madame Maxime did not speak. Oh, we said that. Well, Bagman, however, looked rather excited. Well, shall we crack on then? He said, rubbing his hands together and smiling around the room. Got to give our champions their instructions, haven't we? Barty, want to do the honors? Mr. Crouch seemed to come out of a deep reverie, like he was sleeping as if. Yes, he said. Instructions. Yes, the first task. He moved forward into the firelight. Close to, Harry thought he looked ill, sick. He moved forwards into the firelight. Close to, Harry thought he looked ill. There were dark shadows beneath his eyes and a thin, papery look about his wrinkled skin that had not been there in the Quidditch World Cup. The first task is designed to test your daring, he told Harry, Cedric, Fleur, and Crumb. So we are not going to be telling you what it is. Courage in the face of the unknown is an important quality in a wizard. Very important. The first task will take place on November the 24th, in front of the other students and the panel of judges. The champions are not permitted to ask for or accept help of any kind from their teachers to complete the tasks in the tournament. The champions will face the first challenge armed only with their wands. They will receive information about the second task when the first is over. Owing to the demanding and time-consuming nature of the tournament, the champions are exempted, means they don't have to do, from end-of-year tests. Mr. Crouch turned to look at Dumbledore. I think that's all, is it, Albus? I think so, said Dumbledore, who was looking at Mr. Crouch with mild concern. Are you sure you wouldn't like to stay at Hogwarts tonight, Barty? No, Dumbledore, I must get back to the Ministry, said Mr. Crouch. It is a very busy, very difficult time at the moment. I've left young Weatherby in charge. Very enthusiastic, a little over-enthusiastic, if truth be told. You'll come and have a drink before you go, at least, said Dumbledore. Come on, Barty, I'm staying, said Bagman brightly. It's all happening at Hogwarts now, you know. Much more exciting here than at the office. I think not, Ludo, said Crouch with a touch of his old impatience. Professor Karkaroff? Madame Maxime? A nightcap? Said Dumbledore. But Madame Maxime had already put her arm around Fleur's shoulder and was leading her swiftly out of the room. Harry could hear them both talking very fast in French as they went off into the great hall.
Oh, so it's in French.
They speak French, yeah. Her accent is like French. Karkaroff beckoned to Krum, and they too, excited, exited though in silence. Harry, Cedric, I suggest you go up to bed, said Dumbledore, smiling at both of them. I am sure Gryffindor and Hufflepuff are waiting to celebrate with you, and it would be a shame to deprive them of this excellent excuse to make a great deal of mess and noise. Harry glanced at Cedric, who nodded, and they left together. The great hall was deserted now. The candles had burnt low, giving the jagged smiles of the pumpkins an eerie, flickering quality. So, said Cedric with a slight smile, we're playing against each other again. I suppose, said Harry. He really couldn't think of anything to say. The inside of his brain seemed to be a complete disarray, as though his brain had been ransacked. So, tell me, said Cedric, as they reached the entrance hall, which was now lit only by torches in the absence of the goblet of fire. How did you get your name in? I didn't, said Harry, staring up at him. I didn't put it in. I was telling the truth. Ah, okay, said Cedric. Harry could tell Cedric didn't believe him. Well, see you then. Instead of going up the marble staircase, Cedric headed for a door to its right. Harry stood listening to him going down the stone steps beyond it, and then slowly started to climb the marble ones. Was anyone except Ron and Hermione going to believe him? Or would they all think he'd put himself in for the tournament? Yet how could anyone think that, when he was facing competitors who'd had 3 years more magical education than he had, when he was now facing tasks which not only sounded very dangerous, but which were to be performed in front of hundreds of people? Yes, he thought about it. He'd fantasized about it. But it had been a joke, really an idle sort of dream. He'd never really seriously considered entering. But someone else had considered him. Someone else had wanted him in the tournament and had made sure he was entering. Why? To give him a treat? He didn't think so somehow. To see him make a fool of himself? Well, they were likely to get their wish. But to get him killed? Was Moody just being his usual paranoid self? Couldn't someone have put Harry's name in the goblet as a trick, as a practical joke? Did anyone really want him dead? Harry was able to answer that at once. Yes, someone wanted him dead. Someone who had wanted him dead ever since he had been a year old. Lord Voldemort. But how could Voldemort have ensured that Harry's name got into the Goblet of Fire? Voldemort was supposed to be far away in some distant country, in hiding, alone. Feeble means like weak and powerless. Yet, in his dream, he had, just before he had awoken with his scar hurting, Voldemort had not been alone. He had been talking to Wormtail, plotting Harry's murder. Harry got a shock to find himself facing the fat lady already. He had barely noticed where his feet were carrying him. It was also a surprise to see that she was not alone in her frame. A wizened witch who had flitted into her neighbor's painting when he had joined the champions downstairs was now sitting smugly beside the fat lady. She must have dashed through every picture lining 7 staircases to reach here before him. Both she and the fat lady were looking down at him with the keenest interest, with like the most serious interest. Well, 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 said the fat lady. Violet's just told me everything. Who's just been chosen as school champion then? Balderdash, said Harry dully. Yeah, that's the password. It most certainly isn't, said the pale witch indignantly. No, no, V, that's the password, said the fat lady soothingly, and she swung forwards on her hinges to let Harry into the common room. The blast of noise that met Harry's ears when the portrait opened almost knocked him backwards. Next thing he knew, he was being wrenched inside the common room by about a dozen pairs of hands and was facing the whole of Gryffindor House, all of whom were screaming, applauding, and whistling. You should have told us you entered, bellowed Fred. He looked half annoyed, half deeply impressed. How did you do it without getting a beard? Brilliant, roared George. I didn't, Harry said. I don't know how. But Angelina had now swooped down upon him. Oh, if it couldn't be me, at least it's a Gryffindor. You'll be able to pay back Diggory for that last Quidditch match, Harry, shrieked Katie Bell, another of the Gryffindor chasers. We've got food, Harry. Come and have some. I'm not hungry. I had enough at the feast. But nobody wanted to hear that he wasn't hungry. Nobody wanted to hear that he hadn't put his name in the goblet. Not one single person seemed to have noticed that he wasn't at all in the mood to celebrate. Lee Jordan had unearthed a Gryffindor banner from somewhere, and he insisted on draping it around Harry like a cloak. Harry couldn't get away. Whenever he tried to sidle over to the staircase up to the dormitories, the crowd around him closed ranks, forced another butterbeer on him, stuffing chips and peanuts into his hands. Everyone wanted to know how he'd done it, how he had tricked Dumbledore's age line and managed to get his name into the goblet. I didn't, he said over and over again. I don't know how it happened. But for all the notice anyone took, he might just as well not have answered at all. I'm tired, he bellowed finally, after nearly half an hour. No, seriously, George, I'm going to bed. He wanted more than anything to find Ron and Hermione, to find a bit of sanity, but neither of them seemed to be in the common room. Insisting that he needed to sleep, and almost flattened by the little Creevy brothers as they attempted to waylay him on the foot of the stairs, Harry managed to shake everyone off and climbed up to the dormitory as fast as he could. To his great relief, he found Ron was lying on his bed in the empty dormitory, still fully dressed. He looked up when Harry slammed the door behind him. Where have you been? Harry said. Oh, hello, said Ron. He was grinning, but it looked a very odd, strange sort of grin. Harry suddenly became aware that he was still wearing the Scarlet Gryffindor banner that Lee had tied around him. He hastened, quickly, to take it off, but it was knotted very tightly. Ron lay on the bed without moving, watching Harry struggle to remove it. So, he said, when Harry had finally removed the banner and thrown it into the corner, congratulations. What do you mean, congratulations? Said Harry, staring at Ron. There was definitely something wrong with the way Ron was smiling. It was more like a grimace. I was holding it without really smiling. Well, no one else got across the age line, not even Fred and George. What did he use, the invisibility cloak? The invisibility cloak wouldn't have gotten me over that line, said Harry slowly. Oh, right, said Ron. I thought you might have told me if it was the cloak. Because it would have covered both of us, wouldn't it? But you found another way, did you? Listen, said Harry, I didn't put my name in that goblet. Someone else must have done it. Ron raised his eyebrows. What would they do that for? I don't know, said Harry. He felt it would sound very melodramatic to say, to kill me. Ron's, it would sound like too much to say that, so he didn't say that. Ron's eyebrows rose so high that they were in danger of disappearing into his hair. It's okay, you know, you can tell me the truth, he said. If you don't want everyone else to know, fine, but I don't know why you're bothering to lie. You didn't get into any trouble for it, did you? That friend of the fat lady's, that Violet, she's already told us all. Dumbledore's letting you enter. 1,000 galleons prize money, yeah? And you don't have to do end-of-year tests either. I didn't put my name in that goblet, said Harry, starting to feel angry. Yeah, okay, said Ron, in exactly the same skeptical tone as Cedric. Only you said this morning you'd have done it last night, and no one would have seen you. I'm not stupid, you know. You're doing a really good impression of it, Harry snapped. Yeah, said Ron, and there was no trace of a grin, forced or otherwise, on his face now. You want to get to bed, Harry? I expect you'll need to be up early tomorrow for a photo call or something. Yeah, like... He wrenched the hangings shut around his four-poster bed, leaving Harry standing there by the door, staring at the dark red velvet curtains, now hiding one of the few people he had been sure would believe him.